Let's begin with a bow. So welcome once again to our live stream for this week from Boulder, Colorado, where it's winter has set in. We had a little bit of snow last night, so wonderful feeling of practicing in the early morning and then the day being so short. One feels very held. So I thought this week, in response to some of the questions that I haven't gotten to, I would talk a little bit more about the lower belly. Several people have been asking about that and where does it come from, the practice of breathing into the lower belly, why is it so important, what role does it play in somatic meditation, and so on. And then we will once again do some of the yin breathing into the feminine ground in the lower belly. So we have this very interesting situation in the West where most of the Buddhism that is taught is what I would call exoteric. In other words, it's a type of Buddhism that is taught to the general public, and it's quite accessible, it's quite available. And in contrast with that are the esoteric traditions of Asia. And I want to say a little bit about the difference between the more public style of meditation that is taught around the world and then the esoteric traditions. If you've been listening to these podcasts or you have been listening to some of the other teachings on the Dharma Ocean website, you know that we make a big distinction between meditation that is practiced with the thinking mind or the left brain, top-down meditation where you have expectations, you have practices, you have ways of going about things, you have agendas, and you have goals in mind, images of what you want to achieve, which is the way meditation is normally taught. And then the other type of meditation is somatic meditation, where rather than approaching with a particular goal in mind, or even an idea of what the path is, we attempt to tap into the self-existing wakefulness that is always present in our body. There's a French postmodern writer named Georges Bataille who has said that, I'm paraphrasing, but spiritual traditions in most of the world and in conventional cultures prioritize traditional agendas over direct experience, even though, certainly in Buddhism there's a lot of emphasis on experience, but generally speaking, there's a priority of you could say, conceptual set of expectations and procedures. And the tapping into the direct experience of the body is unwanted, and even such as in our Western traditions, it's suspected. The body is the realm of the devil would be an extreme example. And we could ask, what is going on here? Well, according to Georges Bataille, the conventional cultures, and particularly ones that are more traditional, really are interested, largely as every culture is, in stability and in a kind of a consensus of values and a consensus about what's important, a consensus of what spirituality involves, and a consensus about what is a legitimate experience and what isn't. What happens when we begin to tap into the body is we enter into a very different realm. It's a realm, Hongzhi calls it the wilderness. It's a wilderness. It's a field of experience that is truly untamed, undomesticated, and open. And when we prioritize direct experience over conventional frameworks and prototypes and templates, then the individual wisdom of the practitioner takes priority. And again, what Bataille says is when the individual experience takes priority, conventional cultures, conventional mores, people who really embody the status quo are threatened. And therefore, direct experience is not prioritized. I had, before Rabbi Zalman Schachter died, he and I had a very interesting conversation. And he was talking about his life, and he said one of the things that really marked his own life and caused him so much pain and difficulty, but also so much joy, was that rather than dispensing wisdom, he gave me the image of a huge dam, and he said, people like him punch a hole down low in the dam and they let the water come out, and they trust what's going to happen when the floodgate of wisdom is opened. Conventional religions are the people sitting at the top, and they're dispensing the water cupful by cupful, and they're charging an arm and a leg for it. So, within the framework of Buddhism, the prioritization of direct experience, which is what happens when we work directly with the body, has been something that's been reserved in the past for the yogis who lived up in the mountains, and for the householder lineages that lived in the sort of backwaters of Tibet, in valleys and various out-of-the-way places. What is happening, I think, in the Western world is that we have, in a way, we've kind of tapped out on traditions, and not only our Western traditions, but even I would say the conventional traditions. We've tapped out, but the conventional traditions also of Asia and the conventional traditions of Buddhism. And I think there's a very widespread feeling now that what we actually need in our lives is we need the wilderness of direct experience. We need to begin to explore, each of us, for him or herself, what happens when we set aside all our entanglements and involvements with the external world, and particularly with traditional religions and conventional spiritual mores. When we set those aside and we begin to look into the body and we begin to see what is really going on there. This is a very frightening journey at times, because truly when we enter the body we are exploring a realm of experience that has never been seen before. And what we find out is going to be very unique, very unprecedented. And it's not something we're going to be able to sit down with our friends and tell them, and they're going to agree and see it our way. We enter into a realm of what Trungpa Rinpoche used to call the lonely journey, where we realize that the journey that we're making has never happened before in the universe, and the fields of experience that open up have never been seen before. And the fullness and the richness and the wonder of what we discover through our direct experience at the end of the day is not something we can ever even fully communicate to anybody else. So when we are working generally with the body, that's what we're doing. We are setting aside our involvements, our entanglements, our entrapments, our expectations, all of which are left-brain phenomena in relation even to spirituality and to the journey. And we're descending into our body, and we are tapping into the wisdom, the wakefulness, the field of experience that awaits us there. The ground of the somatic traditions in Asia, the ground is found not just in the body itself, but in the lower belly, meaning that in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, when we are working with the fundamental, empty, and resplendent ground of our being, we access it through the lower belly. If you are a Zen practitioner, you breathe into the hara, you're aware of the hara, Zen, or Chan. And this emphasis on the lower belly really ultimately comes from Taoism, which is the sort of, as I mentioned before, ultimate religion of the body. What is going on in the lower belly? Why is it so important? This space between the navel and the perineum, this what we call lower dantian, the hara, or the secret center. Why is it so important? When we put our awareness there and we begin to breathe into it, a process unfolds. We've been doing this breathing into the lower belly for quite some time in the live streams, off and on. We haven't spent a lot of time with it, but what I want to say is that if you are willing to do this practice, if you're willing to, on a daily basis, lie down, which we're not particularly doing here, but lie down on the floor with your knees up and a strap tied around just above your knees to stabilize your pelvis, and maybe put a towel over your eyes so you don't have any visual input. And then you begin to breathe into the lower belly. And you're breathing. In the beginning you're doing a lot of thinking, maybe. And then you're breathing and you can't really feel anything, so maybe the next thing is you begin to try to feel as if your lower belly is expanding on the in-breath and collapsing on the out-breath. You keep breathing, and then you begin to notice some physical sensations in the middle, and you begin to breathe into that. And what happens over time, and frankly, we're talking 30 to 40 minutes, 45 minutes doing this practice. If you track it and if you follow it, something very interesting happens. Your mind enters into an extraordinarily peaceful state. Your thinking more or less fades into the background or fades away altogether. And you begin to find a cool, open, extraordinarily easeful space in your lower belly. You keep breathing, you keep entering in, and at a certain point you are only working with the sensations of feeling the breath actually entering into the lower belly. And the boundaries of the lower belly, maybe initially you felt like you were in a very cool and peaceful cave in your lower belly as you're breathing in. But then the sense of any boundary on it begins to very kind of slowly melt away. And then at a certain point, you're breathing into space. And you keep going, you keep breathing, and things do come up. Now, one thing about this practice is that if there are things going on with you that you haven't been facing, they're going to come up now. And that's okay. You may have a lot of material coming up about some moment, some turning point in your life, some relationship issues, could be anything. But you keep going, you keep breathing, and eventually there's this very peaceful space that opens up. And you keep breathing and you keep working with it. And what we're doing in this practice is we are changing the way in which our conscious mind relates to our basic being, what we call our primordial soma, which is the experiential, groundless expanse of our deepest experience. We're changing the relationship of our conscious mind to that expanse. and we're changing the neurological wiring so that our conscious mind is always, in some sense, rooted in that very deep and open expanse. What that means is that when we, as we do this practice day in and day out, and perhaps we could follow it with sitting meditation. There are a lot of ways in which you can come out of this and do something in a meditative way, but right now I'm talking about daily life. When you do this practice in a regular way, something changes on a daily basis in terms of how you actually are feeling about your life. When we are compelled by our life, as we are in our families, in our work situations, in our recreation, in our creativity, whatever it may be, of course our mind narrows down, and we do need to focus on things. We do need to relate to cooking dinner, and we need to cut the carrots, and we need to relate to our children. We need to be very attentive and very present to them. But at the same time, there's a kind of a tug, you could say, a tug, meaning that we feel that what we are doing is happening within a much bigger field, and that behind the activity that we're engaged in, there is this immense stillness that we never quite lose touch with. This is important because when we stay in touch with this immense stillness, then the things that we do have much more poignancy. They're much more vivid. We have much more feeling about them. And it's also important because when we get stuck in a situation, when all of a sudden we're in a tug of war with our young child, or there's a moment of we start freaking out about what time it is, or dinner's not ready, or we have an unpleasant interaction at work, immediately the mind, of course, becomes even more shut down. And the contrast between that very shut down, constricted ego mind and the immense stillness that is the background within which this is happening becomes unbearable. And there's a natural process in us where we relax and we let go of whatever that constriction is, and we fall back into the stillness. And then we can return to the situation with a fresh mind and make a new start in terms of how we're going to relate with our child, or how we're going to relate with the fact that dinner's not ready, or the unpleasant interaction, whatever it may be. So we are, when we're breathing into the lower belly, and we do it for a long time, 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, even if we only do it once or twice a week, we are creating, we're deepening the baseline of our fundamental, you could say our fundamental sanity. We are deepening the strength of the voice of our deepest person, and we carry that forward with us. Now, as long as we're talking about this, I'll mention a couple of other things about this breathing into the lower belly practice. If you do this for, let's say you have, on a weekend morning, you may have, a couple of hours to practice. So maybe you do this first. In my case, I'll do it for an hour, just to give myself plenty of time. And then I'll take a break, maybe 10, 15-minute break, and I'll have some tea. Maybe I'll sit in, my rocking chair and look out at the mountains. And then I sit back down again and I do shikantaza. And what is very extraordinary is when you do the yin breathing before you do shikantaza, then you are able to rest at a much, much, much deeper level in the shikantaza practice itself. And this is something that I stumbled upon a while back. And because normally what I would do is do shikantaza first before I did anything else. And I invite you to explore doing yin breathing first and then doing shikantaza. Even if you can only do 15 minutes of yin breathing, do that first and then do shikantaza. What happens, at least to me, is that the open territory that I'm able to explore and the immense silence and stillness in my mind that enables me to explore it with much more precision and care and attention, it's very remarkable. It's very extraordinary. So, working with the yin breathing is creating a kind of very interesting ground, both for our formal practice and for our everyday life. And I'm thinking in the Datan that I'm going to be teaching coming up next month, I'm thinking seriously about really exploring the yin breathing to much greater depth with everybody and seeing what comes out of it. So let's take a few minutes now and let's practice together, and I'll lead you through the yin breathing pathway. You can do this lying down if you want to. I think that, for yin breathing, that's actually really the best posture to begin with, and then you can bring it into the sitting up position. Obviously, in shikantaza, we do breathe into the hara, or the lower dantian. So, but either way, lying down or sitting up, just try to feel your body, just be in your body. And then let's begin to breathe into the lower dantian. So we're talking about an oval shape, just to begin with, roughly midway between the perineum and the navel, in the very center of the body, the size of a goose egg, perhaps, or a duck egg. And just breathing the breath in very gently. And now initially we're not really trying to find the space quite yet. What we're doing now is we're just trying to calm down, trying to down-regulate. We're trying to move from our sympathetic nervous system to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. As we breathe, the stress hormones decline, especially the norepinephrine and the adrenaline, which are very situation responsive. Just breathing in, imagining the breath coming into the lower belly and trying to just relax into that. We're going to be entering a cool, dark cave, and we're going to be able to leave everything, all of our cares, all of our woes, all of our worries, all of our thinking. We're going to be able to leave those outside. What a huge relief. And just enter naked, empty, and alone into the lower belly. So now on the in-breath, feel the space in the lower belly, and you can do that by imagining on the in-breath that this oval shape expands slightly like a balloon being blown up. And on the out-breath, it collapses slightly. So see if you can get that visualization going as you breathe in and out. And then try to feel right at the center of this space, in the lower belly. See if you can feel the sensation of the breath as you breathe in. And just breathe into that sensation and put your attention there as you breathe in. And just relax into it. And then try to find the very center of that sensation in the lower belly as we breathe in. There's going to be a point of infinity. In other words, there's a point that's right at the center of our awareness in the lower belly. See if you can find that as you breathe in. Your mind, your thinking mind might be dancing around the outside. That's perfectly okay. Every time you notice that you're being pulled out, just let go and come back and breathe right into that very center of the lower belly. And notice when you breathe into that point, you kind of lose track of everything. You don't know where the point is. Is it inside the body? Is it outside? I mean, it's definitely in the lower belly, but where is that? What is that kind of space? Just breathing and noticing that the external reference points become shaky. Inside, outside becomes shaky. And then you can relax the focus on the point and just breathe into the space and let the space be as big as it wants to be. or as amorphous, or as groundless, whatever. Have a sense of letting go, letting go, letting go of all judgments, frameworks, labeling, anything, and just breathing in and opening in the lower belly. So as we're breathing, and I'm going to lead you through a couplet by Hong Zhi. So this space that we're breathing into is a field. Hong Zhi calls it the field of bright spirit. Bright means it has a kind of radiance. This primordial space in the lower belly. Spirit means it's alive. It's our spirit, our life, strangely, paradoxically. This field of bright spirit, as you breathe into the lower belly, try to feel that. It's a field, completely experiential, of bright spirit. This field of bright spirit is an ancient wilderness. Ancient means it never had any beginning. It goes back beyond the beginning. It's what existed before your parents were born. So we're breathing into the lower belly, and we're feeling that beginningless quality. This field of bright spirit is an ancient wilderness. Wilderness means that this space in the lower belly exists outside of and independent of any and all civilizations, any and all conventional thinking, societal restrictions and norms. It's a wilderness. A wilderness is alive with life that cannot be anticipated. It's unexpected. The lower belly is the field of bright spirit. It's an ancient wilderness that never changes. It's never domesticated. This space, this expanse, calls us. This field of bright spirit is an ancient wilderness that never changes. And then he goes on. So keep breathing into the lower belly with boundless curiosity. Wander around. Explore this wilderness. Wander around this wide, immaculate plain. When we enter the lower belly, we come upon the ancient wilderness of experience. And we are invited to roam around, wander through, explore this ancient wilderness with boundless curiosity. Breathing into the lower belly is our access point to a different way of being altogether in our life and in the world. We all of a sudden see this whole world is an ancient wilderness awaiting our exploration, our discovery, our avid curiosity. Breathing into the lower belly develops an appetite for life, a presence of being, an utter awakeness and curiosity. That connects us with everything. So let's keep breathing. And looking for that center point. And then on the in-breath, letting ourselves tumble into the immeasurable expanse of lower belly, into the wide, immaculate field. With boundless curiosity. Okay, wonderful. wanted to show you, this is the book that I've been quoting, Cultivating the Empty Field. The Silent Illumination of Zen Master Hong Zhi, translated by Taigen Dan Leighton. It's one of the most remarkable translations of a meditation text that I have come across. It's a very, very beautiful, very subtle rendering of this amazing meditation teacher who lived in the first half of the 12th century. He was born in 1097 and he died in 1152 or something like that. It's probably not quite exactly right. Good. Well, I would like to invite Elizabeth to come sit with me and see what questions you have. In terms of the questions, people have been really kind of asking a lot of questions about the body, but what I want to say is that you really can throw anything you want to in our direction. It could be about anything. And, Tibetan Buddhism, or how to work with emotions, or anything you want to, anything that's up for you, or Buddhism in general, or Taoism, or whatever you want. So, don't hold yourselves back. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Reggie.
Welcome.
Thank you. I would say with the questions, though, if people could work a lot to make them concise and really get clear about what their question is, because sometimes people write long paragraphs and it's hard to find what they're really asking.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
I think it's good work to really sit with the question and work with what is it really, what's the essence of it.
I might suggest you can write a paragraph, but boil your question down to one sentence. That would be really helpful. And then what you can do is you can actually ask the question of the one sentence, and then if I need clarification, you can help me out. Why don't we give that a try? Let's do that. Because Elizabeth has been trying to do it, but it's much better if you actually come up with a sentence than we do, because we don't always know. Yeah, so what have we got
we have some
tonight?
questions from the practice last week. You did the heart opening practice?
Yes.
Monica in Germany. I have a question about the sensations in the heart area during opening the space of the heart. You told us to open more and more and then asked us to observe the feelings there. For me, that seems like a contradiction. I felt so open that there was only space, and it was almost impossible to come back to the subtle energies of the heart while staying there. When I come back to the level of the subtle energies, in my understanding, I am back in duality, which is fine, but different from being in the openness. So is it to experience non-duality and duality somehow at the same time?
Well, that's a good question, and it's really timely. Here's a really interesting point about working with the body that we haven't talked about in the past. If you breathe into the lower belly, what you're contacting is truly the primordial space out of which the whole universe arose. And it's quite interesting in Hong Zhi, he talks about that. This is the space in the lower belly is the space of reality out of which the 10,000 things all manifest. So we're talking there about a kind of utter emptiness. Now, if you do that practice and then you come up and you start breathing into the heart, what happens is you're immediately invoking what the heart knows. What the lower belly knows is the limitless, the immeasurable expanse of fundamental reality. When you come up to the heart, what the heart knows is, within that immeasurable space, it knows the realm of connectivity that we have with everything, the world of relationality. When we are working with the heart initially, we're breathing in and we are opening, and there is going to be a process here. And if you go through the bodhicitta recordings on the website, you'll see the process. Initially it's feeling your heart, what are the sensations, then you begin to tap into the pain, then you begin to use the lotus flower in petal by petal opening, and what you're doing there is you're letting go of all the restrictions. Now you can force yourself into a space of emptiness at that point, but that's not the way to do it. You have to work with your relative heart. What we're doing here is we're not going straight for the emptiness. We're starting with the constricted heart, the shut down heart, the pained heart, the heart that is all closed in on itself, and we're beginning to open that bit by bit by bit by bit. And then at a certain point, we begin to discover there's an emptiness at the center of the heart. But that doesn't negate the relative experience of the heart, because the heart is not about emptiness. The heart is fundamentally empty and open, but what it knows is the world of relationships that we are part of. So, to keep going, so we open the heart, and there's, we begin to look for that calyx of emptiness right at the center, but meantime, the experience of the heart is not being negated. And we begin to explore the heart from that point of view. It's empty, it's open, but there's a lot of stuff going on. And as you do the practice, and if you do it long enough, you're going to begin to find a lot of material coming up. This is something that it happens to everybody, and sometimes the material is very painful. What comes up is all of the disruptions in our relationship to reality, frankly, including, our first caregivers, our natal family, our childhood friends, all the situations we've been in, all the traumas we've suffered, which are largely relational situations, and those begin to come to the surface. And it's very important when they come to the surface that we don't try to go back into the emptiness as a way of trying to get rid of them. To experience the pain of the heart is not to fall back into the realm of duality. That's a very, very important point. Duality happens when we try to separate from the pain, but the pain itself is not duality. Relative experience is not inherently dualistic. It's simply the texture of emptiness. It's the energy of emptiness, and it's the way emptiness begins to form into an apparent world. It's non-dual relativity, if you want to put it that way. If we begin to separate from that pain and say, I'm here and I'm pushing it away, then we're in the realm of duality. So when we're working with the heart, very, very important to stay with the actual relative experience, much of which is painful. And in the future, we can talk about how to work with that, but largely, our problem in our lives with our relationships is that we don't allow the actual visceral experience of relationality to have its voice, to have its say. We're always trying to manipulate and maneuver. That's when we have problems in relationships. It's not that relationships are without pain. They're never going to be without pain, because that's, pain is simply the heat of connection and longing and love that is seeking expression, and we experience that as a relationship pain. It's not a bad thing, though. So I would say, don't prioritize the emptiness, and as much as you can, accommodate what comes up out of the emptiness.
Amanda in Cambridge, UK. I struggle to keep my awareness in the lower belly, and I hope it will improve with practice. When you ask to pull back the curtain, my awareness is starkly brought to a deep, bright darkness, but it's in front of my face and not in my belly. I have a feeling this isn't right. Can you speak more about this?
I would, as I was saying tonight, the opening up the lower dantian, it's one of those practices that, I can show it to you, and we can do it, and we can have a glimpse. But for you to really open it up, you have to actually do it for a long time. And ever since I started doing it, it takes 45 minutes to an hour to really, for the ego's attempt to control the experience in the lower belly to get tired and kind of give up and go away. So you have to put a lot of time into it. But I think if you do put time into it and you keep working at it, you will find that space will open up and you will be able to be there. The only reason we can't be in the lower belly is because we have thoughts and we're thinking about, well, maybe it's there, or we're distracted by different things. And breathing into the lower belly over, a period of 45 minutes to an hour that will really calm down, and that experience really will open up for you. So I don't want you to get discouraged, and I want you to realize that this is a practice that takes time to develop, but over the days and the weeks and the months, you will find it, you get there a lot, more and more and more quickly, and you're able to go more and more and more deeply. But the other thing I would say about breathing into the lower belly is every single time you do it's different. So one of the big obstacles, I think, in doing yin breathing, because we're working with absolutely unconditioned space, primordial space, is our memories of previous experiences. That is, for many people, that's actually the biggest obstacle. Because you had this amazing experience 2 weeks ago and you're trying to repeat it, and you can't repeat it. And that memory is going to get in your way. So you just have to kind of work at it and, sort of disrobe, so to speak, unmask over and over and over, and keep going, because it is in the lower belly and the space is there, and you need to just keep going until you begin to ascertain just where it is.
Diane asks, when doing these practices, my experience typically involves variants of heart pain and sensations of being a vibrating charge of energy. For me, this gets linked with old stories of grief, aloneness, insatiable wanting, etc. Is this just my body remembering unresolved trauma, or is it an inflammation or charging that I do that is incorrect? The way I have worked with it is to try to open to it as direct experience and not judge it, but I would like your guidance if I'm directing it somehow in an unbalanced way.
Well, I think, as we, when we're doing the heart opening practices, like the lower belly, what happens is it's never going to be the same twice. It's always an unfolding thing. And there's emptiness there, there's space, there's energy, there's heat, which we might think of as pain. But there's no story attached to it inherently. There are no stories to the somatic experience inherently. But what we do to try to get our bearings, we will dredge up storylines from the past to attach to these experiences. So I think, the ancient saying, again we're back to Hong Zhi, set aside all of your storylines, set them aside, and simply relate to the direct experience, the direct somatic experience of your heart, realizing that when things happen that you either haven't seen before or you feel threatened by, there's going to be a temptation to want to narrativize it, which means attaching a storyline, but you don't need to do it. And the less you do it, the better. And then there really is a journey that will happen. You will be able to work with it. And I wouldn't be worrying about pathologizing anything that's going on when you do this. We're not talking about you're doing it wrong, there's a big problem, you're doing it incorrectly, you're messing yourself up. These are all things, these are all storylines we bring in to try to orient ourselves. But the orientation is already there in the heart. We don't need to import the external extraneous context of the left brain. It's not necessary.
This question is from Maximilian. He's one of the residents at the Blazing Mountain Retreat Center in
Oh,
Crestone.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
I don't know if people know about that program very much. But
do you want to just say what that is? Because these folks have been speaking up a little bit.
So we have some people that live at the Blazing Mountain Retreat Center, and my understanding is they're working half the day, doing, helping out with preparing and closing down programs, helping on the land and the buildings, etc. And then the other half of the day, they're doing a lot of really beautiful, deep practice in their rooms.
Yeah.
And I've met some of the people that are doing the program. It seems really rich for a lot of them.
One of them, just so you know what's going on down there. An English woman named Rosalind Arland. This is So Dharma Ocean. She wanted to come be a resident last year, and for various reasons, our group down there decided it was premature, and then we decided to go to England and do a program. And Rosalind Arden, in the space of about 5 minutes, pulled together. I gave them 10 days notice, which is I should have been taken out and shot, but I wasn't. There was no notice given. She found this beautiful space, and we wound up with a program with 160 people on 10 days notice. That was Rosalind. So now she's a resident, and I'm just curious, what is she cooking up now down there?
Yeah. So this is from Maximilian.
Mm-hmm.
I used to feel that a sense of play felt frivolous or immature in some way. As I practice, I find myself opening more and becoming lighter and more spontaneously joyful. I also have a sense that I'm growing up and meeting intensity in my practice and life directly with openness. Sometimes things around here seem so serious. There are all these things to do that people think are so important, and somehow within that I feel something gets lost. I'd like to ask about play and its place on the path.
Well, I think what we always say in Dharma Motion is if you see a problem, then you should do something about it. And, if you have 100 people in a program, there are going to be 100 people that see 100 different problems. And they're probably all going to be right. But the way to handle it is actually do something yourself. And we always say that, okay, well, why don't you do something about that? So to Maximilian, I would say, why don't you, help people lighten up and be a mirror for people when they're overly serious. Maybe play some pranks. Don't necessarily go along with the hierarchy if the hierarchy is trying to, impose some kind of dire view of anything. I give you full permission to take responsibility for lightening up the situation down there in Crestone. Okay?
This is from Andrew. Let's see. This is just an observation. When you say put your awareness in the lower belly, there seems to be a couple ways to do this. In my experience, there can be at times a top-down, my head is looking down to the lower belly to see what's going on there, or I can just relax and allow for the lower belly experience to arise. The latter is much more subtle and at times difficult to connect with, but the former seems to give rise to a sense of duality, a feeling of I am watching something in my body.
Yes, that's very good. As I was indicating, I didn't quite say it this way. This way is a good way to say it. In the beginning, we're looking at the lower belly, and we're trying to put our awareness, which is up here, down there, and it's very dualistic. And I think that's why, we have to put some serious time into the practice when we do it, because that approach, you can keep it going for 10 or 15 minutes, but at a certain point you just get tired, and there's a kind of relaxation of the dualistic mind that happens, and then you find yourself in your lower belly, and you're breathing directly into the lower belly, but not from somewhere else, and your awareness is, as he said in the second option, it's much more present within the lower belly at that point. So it is a process. I think we start off with any meditation practice, in terms of the body, we start off in a very dualistic way, and through attending, breathing, trying to be there, eventually we actually arrive at a state that's much closer to a non-dual state. And then ultimately we arrive at a non-dual state. Yeah.
Something's coming about what Maximilian was asking about. Because when we did Datun last year, I guess, with the shikantaza practice, some people were really struggling with the form and the seriousness of it, and the walking meditation and just the tight form. And it really makes people writhe around inside a lot. And some people would talk about, where's the play, where's the joy, where's the movement? And so I don't know if you feel like saying anything more about it from that perspective, when people are really fighting against.
What was your experience of how that worked?
Oh, I love discipline and form. It makes me feel relaxed. So I don't know if I'm a good person to talk about it. That said, I love when we do feast and we dance and we connect. And for me, that was so healing after my background to really incorporate all of life and the joy and the color and the desire and the movement, and just so rich. So I love that we hold both. But I think after our, the form of shikantaza, even for some long-time students I know, was really challenging. So.
Yeah, well, I think we might be talking about, that's a really good point, we're talking about two different kinds maybe of seriousness. I think what Maximilian is talking about is, there does to be in spirit, happen to be in spiritual community, it does tend to be in spiritual communities, and in our community also, that the people who are holding responsibility, whether it's as long-term staff members, or somebody who's come to a program and is like a coordinator in a program, or maybe in charge of the shrine keeper or a meditation instructor. They feel often a tremendous sense of responsibility to deliver this lineage and integrity, to the people who have come. And the reason they feel the responsibility is just because of how much they've received and how important it was for them that they were held by other people, in a strong way, because you need a strong container. You can't really relax. But sometimes it tips over into, the leadership being too rigid and, not being relaxed within the form. And I think, you raise a very interesting point, that with shikantaza in the beginning, it appears to be very uptight and almost militaristic in terms of the form. But part of the instruction, if any of you have had a chance to look at the practice of pure awareness set of CDs, that's now out through Sounds True, you notice that, yes, we do start there, but very soon, even in that program, there's a sense of inner relaxation, a sense of inner space, a sense of the fact that the body is always moving with the breathing and the flow of the blood and the heartbeat, a sense of inner plasticity, a kind of natural flexibility, which translates over into enormous space and play within the body while you're holding the form. And I think when people, often in our culture, we draw this big duality between a container such as Datun or even Dharmotion community or the shikantaza form. We make a big distinction between the container and its apparent inflexibility, and then spontaneity, which we think happens outside of the container. And what I want to say is that true spontaneity comes when you are able to integrate the container into your way of being, and then within that you relax, and then within that there can be tremendous spontaneity. You mentioned the feast practice that we do in programs, Vajrayana programs, and it's very interesting. Vajrayana practice makes you very respectful of the forms of the tradition, and people, when people come to our Vajrayana programs in the beginning, they feel that, the Sangha is all over the place. Well, the Sangha isn't really all over the place. The Sangha, they know how to hold themselves, and then they know how to because they're holding themselves, they're actually restricting the ego sort of license, and holding that form of restriction of the ego, then something inside that is far more expansive, far more playful, far more joyful comes out. And we see that in our feast practice. So in a way, I think the distinction between a form that is actually very, in some sense, very strict, and complete freedom and spontaneity, that duality really is not valid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Don Loristo, I've been dealing with various kinds of addiction since my childhood, and over the years I've done many things to work with addiction. I've stopped certain ones, and I believe that I've made some progress, but the power of the addictive patterns proves otherwise. Mm-hmm. I just seem to move from one addiction to another. Can you speak about this? These addictions cause myself and those around me a lot of destruction and suffering.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the first thing that we have to realize is that it's the nature of the ego to be addictive. That's just the nature of the ego, because the ego is looking for easy answers to the pain of being alive. And everybody does it. Some addictions are socially acceptable, like people who work very, very hard. I was speaking with my doctor today. We were talking about the way in which so many of us use our work as a way to regulate our emotions, and particularly our anxiety, well, that's socially acceptable. Often creativity is a wonderful thing, and it's the beauty of the human person. But very often creativity becomes a kind of addictive process where we use creative process in order to regulate our anxiety and our fear. So, the ego itself is fundamentally addictive. The ego itself does not want to relate directly to the naked experience of human life, which, with all of its pain, all of its pleasure, and mostly all of its out of control. Fundamentally, we can't control our experience, and what the ego does is constantly try to control experience. Sometimes addictive patterns become, they really do take us over, and at times, addictions like alcohol, anorexia, overeating, drugs, compulsive sex, they're out of the norm, and so they receive special attention. And also, I think, because they can be more overtly destructive, although a life of overwork will give you heart disease and you will drop dead. I mean, this is what we were talking about today. That addiction doesn't have a good outcome, the overwork one. But the way to work with addictions really is to develop a very deep inner awareness of how your body is feeling and what your body wants. And what you have to do, let's take overeating, and let's take this very interesting duality, which I experienced myself, find it very, very interesting, between normal, what I would call normal hunger, where blood sugar is fine, and your hunger level, you're hungry, and you can be eating a few hours, and there's no big deal. And the other kind of hunger is this feeling your blood sugar drops, you're weak, you're going to die, you feel like you have to immediately eat a whole chocolate cake. And what I have discovered in working with this is, I'll give you an example, and I noticed this the other day. Right now I'm doing a retreat. I'm spending half the day practice and then half the day doing other things, but I'm doing a lot of practice, much more than I normally do in ordinary life. And what I noticed, I was a little hungry, it was a few hours after breakfast and a little bit hungry, and Caroline and I, we did not have a major disagreement, but something came up that made me anxious. And what I noticed was instantaneously, I wanted to go eat a whole chocolate cake. And I had that, my blood sugar fell. Now, how can your blood sugar fall in 1 second? Interesting. And I felt weak. I felt like I've got to eat something right now. I'm going to die if I don't. You know that feeling of desperation and panic? And that happened. I could see it happen as a direct response to the anxiety of the interaction that Caroline and I had. And I go, okay, this is interesting. Now I'm just going to sit down in this chair for a minute. And the next thing was, I asked my body, what's going on? Is this your hunger? And it goes, no. And I go, do you want me to eat something now? And it goes, no. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to work with this? So I turned my attention to that feeling of panic and wanting to eat anything. We don't have chocolate cake, so luckily, I didn't have that option. But we have a lot of almonds, which I like. So I turned my attention directly to that feeling, and something happened. The minute I turned around and faced it and opened myself to it and entered into it, it just went away. So I think the reason I bring up this example is because I think it shows us that if we are willing to approach any kind of addiction, including overwork or anything else, if we're willing to approach it as an issue of a somatic issue, that can be explored somatically and resolved somatically, and then a huge amount happens. Things can change, things can transform, and addictions, while, as long as there's ego, the addictive temptation is not going to disappear entirely. But the minute we begin to be able to work with addictions in the way that I've described, all of a sudden we begin to feel empowered, and we don't feel so much at a loss and victimized, by the feelings that we have, whether it's toward food or work or alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be. In order to do this, we do have to work with the body, and we do have to develop somatic awareness. So this is the thing. If you want to work with your addictions in that way, then I would suggest spending a lot of time with your body. And as I mentioned, there's a tremendous number of practices that are offered on the our website for free, and explore them. Get to know your body, learn how to feel things from the inside, and then begin to do the kind of work I'm describing here with your addiction and see what happens. I think you might be very, very pleasantly surprised.
This is from Terry. She's been practicing with Dharma Ocean for a year. She feels she's greatly benefited from her practice, and her family feels the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to continuing. My husband has seen some of the gifts of the lineage and has shown some interest in mindfulness and meditation, but at this point is not practicing with Dharma Ocean. If he never joins the Sangha, can we still have a consort relationship?
Of course. Yeah. You knew that and I knew that, but it's good for us to say it. I mean, a consort relationship is, it's defined by the connection that you have with your husband and that he has with you. If there is if the kind of connection that you have is that both of you want to open to the other fully and completely, no reservations, no judgments, and find out who the other person is fully, as deeply as possible. That's the fundamental spiritual inspiration, of all somatic work. That we, like Huang Zhi says, your husband is a wilderness, meaning who he is and what he is lies completely outside the realm of any ideas or expectations that you may have about him, and beyond any previous experience you have, also any memories you have. He's a true wilderness, and the question is, are you up for it? Are you up for meeting a wilderness in the person of your husband? And is he up for meeting the wilderness that is you? That's the only question. And if the answer is yes, it doesn't matter what lineage or club you belong to or don't belong to. So maybe one more?
I once heard you say that Trungpa Rinpoche once told you that the highest teaching of Vajrayana Buddhism is to follow the pattern of the mind. Would you please elaborate a little bit on this?
Well, let's come back to Huang Zhi and the what was that quote? Hang on. I don't want to get it wrong. He says, the field of bright spirit is an ancient wilderness. So when we enter into that empty, open, bright field of the spirit, of our life, of our inspiration, we can't use our conventional mind anymore at all. Obviously, in a wilderness, all of your civilized thinking is out of date and it's irrelevant. So then the question comes, how do we find our way within the bright, within the ancient wilderness of experience? How do we find our way? We find our way step by step by following our nose, by picking up the scent. And we can never see the path beyond this moment. The only thing we know within the wilderness is what the next step is. As we begin to go step by step, that's following the pattern of mind. It's following the pattern of awareness as it unfolds within the wilderness. It's very similar to the Aboriginal youths who do a walkabout. They're given tools, 12, 13 years old, and they are sent out into one of the most hostile environments on planet Earth, into the outback, and they are to follow the pattern of their own awareness as they make their walkabout, and to live off the land and to nourish themselves from what each day brings them. That's what it means to follow the pattern of the mind. So, yes, wonderful to be with you again, as always. I would like to just say something about the online Datun that we are offering this winter. I think, as most of you know, if you wanted to sign up for weeks 3 and 4 of our Datun, those are full. If you want to come to Crestone, weeks 1 and 2 are still open. We have a few spaces. And also at my request, Dharma Ocean has been willing to register people, at least for the time being, who would like to come for the whole Datun. So if there's anybody that wants to come for the whole Datun, we'll make room for it, even though weeks 3 and 4 are basically pretty much, well, they're basically entirely full. But concurrently with the regular Datun, with the in-person Datun, we're offering this online Datun. And I feel it's a very interesting and very powerful way for you to be connected with what I'm going to be teaching in Crestone. It's going to be offered the last 2 weeks of the Datun, which means from December 27 for the next 2 weeks. And the way it works is you'll be listening to talks that I give. There'll be an online discussion group, and you'll have a meditation instructor, that you can relate to as you need to, who will be a group leader, but also be a reference point for your practice. And I think also, a very important part of this is that I'll be asking you to commit to a certain amount of daily practice, and for each person it's going to be different, but it is over the holidays. The first week is during Christmas week. So in the past, people have committed to 4 hours, 5 hours, or 6 hours of sitting, and that combined with the talks and the discussion groups and the MI interviews has been very powerful, and particularly for folks who are not able to come to Crestone to be with us in person. As I discussed earlier in this series of live streams, it's very important, I think, for all of us not to assume that spatial distance equals spiritual distance. And what we have found is that there is a kind of, when we're practicing together, and particularly you're hearing my talks, there is very much a sense of that we are together, and I was very surprised last year, at how I felt it, and the folks remotely felt it. Very much together, very much making the same journey, very much synced into each other, so the things I were talking about was addressing issues that I was talking about were addressing issues that people were feeling in Australia and Japan and South America. So this is new territory, but it seems to be a very legitimate and very powerful and very profound set of possibilities that we are beginning to explore. So I want to just let you know about it and invite you to be part of what we're planning. Okay, anything else? Did I miss anything? Great. Let's close with a bow and see you next week.